Good evening and welcome to Speedway Town Council meeting. I call our August 12th, 2019 meeting to order at 7 p.m. My name's Eileen Fisher. I'm town president. Attending this evening to my right is Councilor David Lindsay.
Good evening.
I have Vice President Jeff Matthews.
Good evening.
To my left, I have Councilor Gary Rakes.
Good evening.
Town Manager Jacob Bladesdell.
Good evening.
Clerk Treasurer Monty Combs.
Good evening.
And Town Attorney Bob Clutter.
Howdy do.
With that said, we'll go ahead and start with the agenda that has been posted, and we'll start with the pledge, if everyone would please stand. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next are the minutes, the approvals for the minutes of the July 22nd, 2019 meeting. Any changes on those? Seeing none, those minutes have been approved. Next is the approval for the noise waiver until midnight for concert events on September the 7th. Jacob?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So of course, we're talking about the Florida Georgia Line concert that will take place on September 11th at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as part of the Brickyard weekend of events. They might not go, but they might go past 11 o'clock, which is our typical noise ordinance time. So they requested that we bump that time back to midnight that night, just in case there are any issues, and they can be compliant with the ordinances, and would appreciate your approval.
Madam President, I move that we approve the noise waiver as presented for September 7th.
Second.
So I have a first and a second for the noise waiver for September 7th concert. At this time, we'll take any public comments. Seeing none, any comments or questions from councilors?
I do have one. Jacob, this is the week before the Brickyard, correct?
Yeah, the weekend.
Okay.
The weekend of.
The USAC races are that week as well?
They are, yeah.
Last year, that went past time. Does this apply to that, or?
Yeah, so there were weather events last year that caused the times to get moved back, and IMS wanted to make sure they're going to be compliant, and that's kind of what started the conversation here. And doing that, our town attorney Bob Clutter and I looked at the ordinances, and that doesn't really, that's not inconsistent with the ordinances. That doesn't violate an ordinance, so we're not asking for a waiver for that reason. So, hopefully everything runs on schedule. If it does go late, that's not actually a violation of ordinances. Okay. So good question.
Yeah, thank you.
And Jacob, just a point of clarification for some, we've done the noise waiver before with other events over at IMS, here most recently with the Rev event in May. Is that correct?
That's right. We've done it for the last few years for Rev, just again, because they might go a little bit past 11. They just want to make sure that they're compliant with the ordinances.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor of approving the noise waiver for September 7th, say aye.
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 Those opposed, approved 4-0. Next is the approval of an agreement for the utility location services. Jacob?
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. So we have an agreement with SAMCO to do utility line locates for us. Historically, the town employees have had to go out and do locates every time somebody calls 811 to get locates, which we certainly encourage people to do. We realize that our employees are spending a lot of time running around, and SAMCO is already doing locates for other utilities, and gave us a good price to go ahead and do our locates for our utilities while they're on site. They've agreed to do an extension. It's been working out really well. They've agreed to extend it with no increase to fees or charges. So we would ask that the agreement be approved to continue.
Madam President, I move that we approve the agreement for the utility location service with SAMCO.
Second.
So I have a first and a second. At this time, we'll take public comments. Seeing none, any additional questions from councilors? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of approving the agreement for utility location services, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, approved 4-0. Next is appointments to boards and commissions. This evening, I think we're just doing arts.
Yeah, Madam President, I would nominate Katie Myers for the Arts Board.
I move that we close nominations.
Second.
So we've closed the nominations for boards and commissions for arts. And, I'm sorry, who was that again? Gary?
Katie Myers,
Katie.
she had sent her interest to the council.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and take a vote on that. All those in favor of approving Katie Myers to the Arts Commission, say aye. Opposed? Approved 4-0. Next is a public hearing that will open up a public hearing at 7:05. This is for public hearing for 2019-Z0N-071, which is common addresses at 2502, 2540, and 2610 North High School Road, along with 6330 and 6331 Debonair Lane, all in Speedway Township District 6. The Speedway of Town Redevelopment Commission requests to rezone approximately 26.4 acres. At this time, we'll take any public comments or additional, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Elizabeth Vance-Williams. I'm a land use planner with Clark Quinn, Moses, Scott, and Grahn, representing the Town of Speedway Redevelopment Commission in this proposed rezoning this evening. I've handed out just information that is in your file, but to help lead you through my presentation. Under tab 1, you will see a vicinity map showing that the addresses that were read off are basically 26-plus acres at the northwest corner of Crawfordsville Road and High School Road. The current zoning is CS, Commercial Special, and a small portion zoned C4. On the bottom edge, just north of Crawfordsville Road, you see sort of a triangular piece. That's where the existing wireless communication facility is, and that's the C4 portion of the zoning. The request is to rezone this property to a new Commercial Special District. The development is to be known as Founders Square. It's located at one of the gateways to the town of Speedway. So the development and the details of this proposed site are extremely important to the town. The town, their staff, and the developer for Founders Square have spent many months of planning and research, which have culminated in the filing of this rezoning request. The goal of the proposed rezoning is to create a development-ready site. Under tab 2, you find the site plan. The site plan is laid out to identify locations and layouts for anticipated uses. For a zoning plan, it's very detailed. Many times in CS zonings, building footprints are not included. It's a delicate balance to have thoughtful plans incorporating proposed and existing uses for rezoning purposes, as well as the infrastructure prior to final engineering and contract agreements with future users. The preliminary site plan provides for one large-scale use anticipated to be a medical facility. There are also various identified uses, including a grocery, a hotel, and a car wash. Some uses on the site are existing and may be relocated, which in turn will provide an opportunity for additional new uses along High School Road. As I mentioned before, there's an existing wireless communication tower on the site, which will be remaining. Part of the plan will be an extensive landscape plan, which will also be concentrated around that cell tower along with fencing, to mitigate the effect of that to the greatest degree possible, and have an opportunity to showcase the town of Speedway with proposed gateway features and sign, which are detailed in the sign program. The entire thrust of this project is to upgrade the entry to the town of Speedway from the west, to welcome and provide needed services for the community as well as travelers to the town. The development will have upgraded architectural standards and requirements fitting to reflect the heritage of the town of Speedway and the substantial investments the town continues to make within all sectors of its jurisdiction. I want to talk a little bit about procedures with everything that's going on with this 26 acres. Because it's entirely located within the town of Speedway, we were required to file the rezoning petition with the city of Indianapolis. And as you know, last month, you, as the council, made the determination to set as hearing examiner for this petition. It will then go to the Metropolitan Development Commission and then to the City County Council for final approval. Any variances required must be filed and heard by the Speedway Board of Zoning Appeals. Then final site and landscaping plans, as you saw, we have a preliminary plan at this point, are subject to administrative approval by the Department of Metropolitan Development. Architectural reviews, building and sign elevations are subject to the approval of the Town of Speedway Redevelopment Commission. So there is a lot involved in developing this property and how it's going to look and how it's being planned. Our filing included the site plan, plan of operation, and a sign program. This plan of operation identifies the variances that we determined will be needed. However, they're not a subject of this petition. A list of them is included as information and a courtesy in the plan of operation. The listed variances, I said, enumerated in the plan, have been filed and are scheduled for hearing on September 4th before the Board of Zoning Appeals here in Speedway. When we met with staff last week, we discovered there were items of concern with the filing for the rezoning and the reason for staff's recommendation of denial tonight. In response, we drafted and filed amendments to the plan of operation, and we have been working right up until this afternoon to try to come to a recommendation of approval. Under tab 3, you'll see, this is a page out of the plan of operation. We presented a list of permitted uses, including the existing uses, and expanded those to include hospital, medical, car wash, and such things as a farmer's market and assisted living. Additional time was expended to create a thoughtful list of prohibited uses, felt to be inappropriate at this location, serving as an upscale entrance to the community. Now I'd like to review the amendments that were filed last Thursday. I believe staff's primary concerns in the staff report boil down to the wellfield protection area and one permitted use in the permitted use list. If you look on the first item on the left-hand side of the list of permitted uses that's highlighted in yellow is automobile and light vehicle car wash. And staff had concern about that use. We understand this use is required to be reviewed by a technically qualified person, that's a term out of the ordinance, before permitting can occur. This use is not prohibited by the ordinance, but because of the materials they keep on site and the amount of drainage that they have, that's one of the uses that they want to review. We added language to the use that it's subject to review and approval by the department's technically qualified person per section 742-24B of Indy Rezone. The next use we want to talk about, which I think is the most onerous in staff's mind, is the automobile fueling center, and that's highlighted in blue. We understand in order for this to be a permitted use, it's not just a permitted use in the zoning district. That's the primary zoning district. The well field is a secondary district and holds a whole nother set of requirements. So not only would they also need the TQP approval, but they'd also have to have a variance sought because the underground tanks that gasoline stations use are a prohibited use in the well field district. So there's two more places that are more equipped to review these than in a zoning that covers so many other things. It's important to note that there are 2 gas stations currently on site, one operating and one's closed. They're owned by the same entity. By having gas stations as a permitted use, the town only wants to allow the existing, not permit additional gas stations. Further, if the gas station is permitted to move slightly, the facility can be upgraded with the latest technology for controlling and monitoring underground tanks. To that end, we added language stating not more than one gas station and limited to the existing entity and their successors or assigns. Also subject to review and approval by the TPQ per Indy Rezone and subject to a grant of variance to permit the underground tanks. The next use that was in question was the motorsports industry, indoor uses only. This was included to provide for the possibility. That's not something that's planned immediately, but because it's Speedway, we think that that might be something appropriate at the gateway. It's not for automobile garages or shops. However, offices, some uses that might be a museum or other opportunity to showcase the industry might be very appropriate. So we added the language not to include garages or team shops, limited to offices, museums, engineering and technology, research facilities, and uses that showcase innovations. So basically an opportunity to show off and show our heritage. I would say great care and attention has been involved in crafting this particular commercial special zoning district. While we understand staff's opposition to the petition is based on one permitted use, the gasoline station, it's our opinion that we need to leave this as a permitted use because of the existing gas stations on site. This is only to provide for that existing use and possibly their relocation. However, this zoning does not remove any of the other requirements or approvals necessary for that to occur. It's our opinion that that should not jeopardize the rest of this zoning request. For these reasons, we'd like to incorporate the materials into the record and ask for your favorable recommendation of the rezoning subject to the plan of operation and the sign program. And I am happy to answer any questions.
I have one question.
Okay.
I think it's already been asked or been brought up, but this is CS, and we're moving it to CS.
That's right.
But we're restricting and limiting what can go in and what cannot go in, correct?
That's right. It already has a CS, but that was done in conjunction with property, a much larger acreage and included property to the south. And it had a set of uses and a few prohibited uses. We have enhanced the permitted uses based on some of the uses such as the medical, hospital, senior living, those types of things that we think are going to be the future of this property, and included the existing uses, and then put a lot of thought into more prohibited uses, that not that they aren't appropriate somewhere else, but here at the gateway, and especially isolated in uses and maybe not part of another larger use would not be. So it's particular in that only what we ask for is what, it's like getting a new suit. You replace a suit with a suit, but they're completely different.
Other questions?
I'll be happy to then make any other appropriate comments during rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you.
This time we'll take public comments.
Kathleen next, and then, staff.
Rebuttal.
Staff. Kathleen next, and then public comment.
Good evening, President Fisher, members of the Town Council. Kathleen Blackham, I'm with the Department of Metropolitan Development, a senior planner there in current planning section. Ms. Williams has described what is going on with this and what staff's concern is. The CS, and that question was asked, it sounds kind of crazy, but if you want to change the uses, you rezone it from a CS to a CS and add and subtract uses to what you really want in that particular district. When staff looks at requests, we look at two documents. The first one is the ordinance, and the other one is the plan. And the plan that staff looked at is the Speedway Redevelopment Area 2 Master Plan that recommends regional commercial. It has three purposes. One is to make it a regional destination with the access off of I-465. The second one is to promote and facilitate a healthy social and economic environment that is a regional destination for all ages. And third, due to the traffic generation, the nature of operation or aesthetics of these uses, residential uses and industrial uses are prohibited. Those are in the plan, but I want to make sure you understand that those are just recommendations. It is not code, nor is it the ordinance. But when you look at the ordinance, again, staff and Ms. Williams indicated staff's main concern here is that automobile fueling station. Because the ordinance, the Wellfield Protection District, has two designations, a W1 and a W5, and that relates to the amount of time that something goes into the ground and it hits that aquifer. W1 is 1 year, W5 is a 5-year time of travel. This property, with the exception of a small triangular area abutting the right-of-way to the ramp there to 465, is designated as a W5. And the automobile fueling stations are prohibited in those well fields. As you can guess, the reason is that the contamination of the groundwater where we get our drinking water. It specifically, there's Chapter 742 specifically prohibits underground storage tanks. No new underground storage tanks shall be permitted in the W1 or W5 well field protection zoning district. That's where staff's concern is. Now, they indicated there's already one there. That can obviously stay there, but if it changes, if they want to move the location, albeit small, it would mean that there is a new underground tank required, which is prohibited. Again, staff is concerned about that, the primary concern that staff has with this request. Ms. Williams also talked about, mentioned the automobile and light vehicle car wash. That's one of those uses in the well field that requires review. It requires a site and a development plan and review by a technically qualified person, which is a TQP. The city has hired someone there and serves as our consultant to review review uses when they are within the well field. That process occurs during the permitting process. The other concern was the motorsports industry, because the plan for this area recommends that it not be included. But staff believes with the changes that have been made within the last week on narrowing that down and limiting some of the uses that would be considered industrial, staff's concern with that has been alleviated to a degree. Staff is concerned that the preliminary site doesn't have many labels and many details, and the building footprints, Ms. Williams has already indicated that it doesn't show square footage, but it shows footprints of buildings. Staff would like to see a little more detail because that allows for more thorough review. Did mention that the administrators would have the ability to review final plans, and typically those final plans are also forwarded to the town of Speedway for their review also. So again, staff's primary concern here this evening is that well field, the W5, and the fact that there would be the possibility of some tanks going into that well field, and for those reasons, staff is recommending denial of this request, and would be glad to answer any questions that you have.
I have a couple questions, and appreciate your report and thoroughness in that. In talking with our engineering team and administrators, I understand that the boundary line and actually the definition of 1 year and 5 year, I'm not using the right terminology, I know, but changed somewhat recently. We have a new fueling station get-go, which has been a very successful location for us in more ways than one, much closer to the wellhead, the well area that you're speaking now about, and that was just a couple of years ago that was approved and put in. And then kind of, for I'm sure some various reasons, that the definitions changed, the specifications changed, and so where we now have an interest in putting another fueling station with newer tanks, it would be brand-new tanks, newest technology, the most, the strongest, I would think, in terms of limiting any kind of failure, versus 30-year-old tanks that are in the ground. Staff saying they're okay with 30-year tanks, but they're not okay with brand-new tanks in a further distance than where we put brand-new tanks just a couple of years ago. Can you help me understand that?
The well field and those boundaries of the well fields, those are reviewed every 5 years. And the new gas station that you mentioned got in there just prior to the changing of those boundaries of the well fields. That's why they are permitted. So again, this will be reviewed. All well fields are reviewed every 5 years. And those boundaries can change. But again, what we're looking at now is an ordinance, and that boundary, and it is included in the staff report that shows that boundary of the well field, and this is square in the middle. And understand, 30-year-old tanks versus new ones, but staff is looking specifically at the ordinance in this case, and it does have concern about a new tanks going into the well field.
I just want to get on the record. I appreciate that FEMA is not your department. It's a federal group, but we've had a similar circumstance years ago where FEMA moved boundaries from a floodplain, and we have hundreds of homes in our town being charged floodplain insurance. We've made all the changes and actually spent a great deal of money making changes to meet their code, and we're now waiting on the federal government, past administration, current administration, to come forward and honor the changes that we've made. And these boundary line changes, when there's been nothing really changed within our area, actually, we probably strengthened our area by retention ponds and other things that we've put in these areas to move flow of water above ground and underground. To me, these are concerning issues. We spent tens of millions of dollars in our town, invested tens of millions of dollars developing the opportunity for companies to come and invest their monies in our town. And I don't understand how these boundaries change just that quickly and why they change.
Right, and again, I'm not an engineer, so I can't explain what they use as far as criteria when they look at those boundaries and what causes, I'm talking specifically with the well field, and what causes those boundaries to move. I can't answer that. I don't have that capability, nor do I have that expertise, but what we do as planners, we look at those maps, and then we base our decisions and our comments on those maps.
Are there occasionally exceptions to the rule that are granted?
Now that I can't speak to, but I do know that there have not been any new automobile fueling stations in any of the well fields since those boundaries have changed.
From a legal standpoint, if somebody did want to make those exceptions or have those exceptions made, they would need to apply for a variance. And additionally, it would have to meet the approval of the TQP under the ordinance.
Right. Correct. That TQP, that technically qualified person, is the key to this particular situation.
Other questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that, you've mentioned the well field, that's your reason for not wanting to approve this, but then
Yes.
you also mentioned that you've reviewed the plans that are not detailed enough?
Yes, in fact, staff prefers to see something a little more detailed in terms of responding to some of the development standards, such as parking and setbacks and that type of thing. There was also on the site plan up against the interstate, that ramp there. I wasn't sure what that was, but it looked like a detention or a retention pond. It would have been nice just to have that labeled so that that staff would understand that that's exactly what it is rather than having to guess on those things. But again, more detailed plans would be provided. at some future date. It would have to be before any improvement location permits or any permitting occurred. But it's, again,
I guess I'm not on a zoning board, I don't know all the rules, but us approving this is the first step of many,
oh, yes,
or approving or not approving, I guess
that
you
is
should say.
correct, yes.
So us approving this or not approving this, say we approve it and this lists what we are allowed to have in there, then we could plan forward for what you're wanting to see.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And that would meet your approval then?
Yes, more detailed plans would be provided. And then if we have concerns, we would obviously be, would go back and forth and have a discussion with those that submit those plans.
Okay. And I think I'm going to echo what Councilor Rake says is, to me, if we have a gas station there that has 30, that gas station's been there as long as I've been in town.
Yes, it
And
has been.
if we install new tanks, that's going to improve the location and prevent a hazard that could occur there, is how I look at it.
And that's a fair argument.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
just,
that something that staff looks at, though? I mean, and to get those approved?
What staff looks at, and is the ordinance, and we also rely on, there's staff at the Health Department, Marion County Health Department, that also look at that, and they would obviously be reviewing that.
I want to just make a point. Yes, there is a retention pond drawn into here, and it's not labeled. There are hundreds of parking spaces that are drawn in here, and they're not necessarily labeled that way, but it's pretty obvious what they are. And
Right.
to Councilor Lindsay's point, that information would come forward in the next steps, no doubt.
Well, and the square footage, the number of parking spaces, staff is concerned about parking, but the number of parking spaces are going to be based upon the square footage, and that's why staff made the comment in the report that can't really comment on that because we don't have square footage or the uses of
And the
those
use,
buildings. But
obviously.
again, that will go back to the administrator's approval.
Sure.
Maybe you don't know this, but the tanks that are being moved, if I'm correct from what I've been told, they're not going to be moved that far away from where they are now, is my understanding of it. And
Well-
it's still going to be within the well field, still within the W5.
Correct?
But I guess I get back to the point of we're improving the area that's there.
I understand that, yes, yeah.
That's all I have.
Any other questions, comments?
No other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now you might open it to the public for any other.
At this time, we'll take public comments.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes. My name is Pam Tevin. I'm with the Marion County Public Health Department. I'm the Administrator for Water Quality and Hazardous Materials Management. It's my staff that participates in the review of improvement location permits that are located in all the well fields in Marion County. We support the city's ordinance. We spent a lot of time during Indy Rezone talking about this particular issue because a lot of people want to put gas stations in Marion County. So we support the prohibition. I understand about the upgrading of the tanks. If they were to be moved, I guess moving it from one spot to the other is considered to be new. That's what's prohibited. Actually, the owner right now could upgrade those tanks if he wanted to. The ordinance allows for tanks to be upgraded and replaced now. And in fact, we would encourage that as long as the volume isn't increased. So I didn't know about the current development plan. I didn't know, there was no mention about, is the amount of gasoline proposed going to be higher?
Yeah.
Should this pass? Do you know?
I think so.
They'd be the same size tanks.
It's going to be status quo in terms of the volume?
I would think actually
I
it may
think
be
that would
lower.
be, it could be lower.
We have two stations today in that area.
Well, that one station, the tanks have been long gone, removed for a long time. So I don't even know that really would be on the table in terms of contributing to groundwater pollution. There's no tanks there. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and let you know that the Marion County Health Department supports the City of Indianapolis zoning prohibition in this case. Thank you, unless you have any questions.
So you're saying if you're fine with the tanks staying there, as long as if they stay in the same place, then they can be replaced?
Yes,
But if they are moved to a different location, they can't be replaced.
that's the way I understand it.
Okay.
Thank-
Thank you.
Thank you.
They're right there. Put them under parking.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Kirchner, and I'm with Circle K, and I wanted to let you guys know that the capacity of the tanks would be exactly the same size. Right now, they are what we are putting into new facilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, you all. Rick Rising Moore, 6225 West 25th Street, Union Jack Pub. I agree with this young lady here, and I don't know anything about it, but it sounds reasonable to me. However, as I drive around Indianapolis, Indiana, around 465, you got the most premier piece of real estate left around 465. There's a huge demand for hotel, because we hear about it all the time. I just had a friend of mine coming in for the National Drags from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and recommended the Marriott, and they're full, and as a lot of other hotels are. So I don't know how the tax base works on car washes and that sort of thing, but it doesn't seem like to me that that's a good use of real estate when we have a car wash, one on 38th Street, another one down on Cartersville Road. So I believe it really needs to be looked at very, very carefully before any decision is made about car washes and gas stations and that sort of thing. So, but we've come a long, long way in the last few years, getting all the dredge out of the community and hotels, but no apartments. Condominiums would be good. I think there's a demand for that. So appreciate the opportunity to chat with you a little bit, and good luck on all your adventures here. Ciao.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good evening, council members. My name is Tom Dickey. I'm Managing Director of Real Estate with Hageman Group. We are partnered with rebar companies to develop this project. We're under contract with the Speedway Redevelopment Commission. And I'm just going to try to connect some dots. A lot you've heard, probably most of what I'm going to say you've heard already tonight, but I want to connect some dots in timing. And so therefore I'm going to try to be brief. We got involved about almost a year ago when we learned about this property through Tim Gropp and Councilor Rakes, and really began to sort of envision what it could be, and participated in many public meetings, which you'll recall, I think it was late last summer, early fall, with the community. And there were several top goals that you all had, the Redevelopment Commission had, and many of your residents had. And one of those was to clean up the old gas station there. No offense to Circle K, but I think they'd be the first to admit it's an age station. It had its heyday and it served its purpose well, and it's time to be repurposed. And so I don't know for sure, but I know it's been many, many years, and Councilor Rakes could probably confirm this, that
Are you saying I'm old?
No, that you've been serving, you've been in public service for a few years. Nothing to do with your age or mine.
I see.
To move that gas station. And so there's been a discussion about putting that gas station on the corner, because Circle K has said, look, we want to be in this market. We like this market. We do well here. We've been here for years serving the community. We don't want to just disappear, but we recognize we have an old station. And so one of the key things as a developer we were told is figure out how to make that happen. And so with the town's leadership, essentially what's happening is just a land swap. The two old stations get decommissioned and cleaned up, and as one of the speakers mentioned, I think one of those is already cleaned up and has an NFA on it. But they're gone, and a new, nice, modern station is on the corner. And so that was a goal of yours from the beginning, goal of the Redevelopment Commission's from the beginning. That's something that we've sort of got teed up to happen. And then we started learning about W5 and just how close it is, and even just to add just a little more intricacy to how close this is to being not an issue at all, is that there's a piece of a triangle that is currently in the current gas station that will be part of the new gas station. I mean, it's that close to really not being an issue at all, and I could show you that. It's not a huge piece, but there is land that they own today, which will be a piece of the land that they own in the future. So it is that close. And then the second thing, just from a timing perspective, I don't know how long ago that you all decided as a town to clean up that corner, but it's been many, many years ago, and this has been part of that plan. And I can understand and echo the frustration of sort of the rules changing midstream and being that close to W1 and W5. We certainly support the goals of the ordinance, and the city of Indianapolis has kind of led that throughout the country as far as really protecting the wellheads, and so we appreciate that certainly. But we do think there's a good plan here, And and one more thing I want to comment on was, the plans are not detailed now. This is the rezoning stage. I think Councilor Lindsay pointed out. We're just rezoning the property. We're going to come back with detailed plans, and you'll see those along the way. But I wanted to make those comments and make myself available for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Elizabeth has an opportunity for rebuttal under the MDC rules for the hearing examiner. I don't know if she's got anything she wanted to add. But
Just a couple of things, if you'll indulge me. I think a lot of it has been said. I mean, we all know that this corner, there's been work on this for, like 10 years, and it's easy now that it looks better to kind of forget the eyesores and the hotels and things that the town has taken the effort and the dollars to spend to do that. And all of this takes time, and that's kind of how we got in the position that we're in. But it's also things like, the well fields are a good idea. There's no doubt about that. But the one thing that's different about this site that I don't think that maybe that's happened in other places before is we haven't had this replacement issue with just, it's not just a new station coming in, it's trying to deal with this existing development. And it wasn't overlooked, it wasn't ignored, and it wasn't in a vacuum. First of all, the maps hadn't been changed, and it wasn't an issue when they first started talking about it. And then they did have conversations with the water department here that are the caretakers of your wellheads, so that they feel they know best and what is going on there, and that would be appropriate. I think it's also important to note that we identified variances that we felt were needed to make this development, this site development ready. And that and we met with staff to explain what those were. And the BZA will be hearing that about, parking and height and different things. If use-specific things come in and they haven't met, because you don't really know until you know what hotel it is and how many floors and rooms and those sorts of things. If they need additional variances, they would have to do that. One thing that's not on our list is the town of Speedway is not filing for the variance for the underground tanks. So it is included in our list of uses because it's there, and we are trying to work together and as a unit with this entire piece. But we won't be asking for the TQP, and we won't be asking for those variances. So I think that's one reason why we're making the distinction that the zoning shouldn't be denied because of one use that can't happen without additional approvals with people that are more specialized in looking at those types of things. And I'm not prepared to tell you all the things about the well field either, because that's not my area of expertise. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions you have, and I appreciate your time this evening.
Can you kind of expand? I think I understood what you're trying to say there at the very end. But are you saying that we should approve this as written so there can be the steps to move forward for Circle K to stay or whatever? And I learned the term W1, W5 just recently, that people who have a lot more knowledge about this than me can determine what will happen. Is that more or less what you're saying?
That's right. I mean, it is, Kathleen explained it well as far as what that means and the amount of time that it could reach the aquifer and contaminate it if there were a spill or something on that property. And in this case, if those tanks are replaced, the town, the Redevelopment Commission and the developers are trying to work together on this, because where they're at now is where we'd like to put a road through. So that's the impetus really on changing it. The plus side for everyone would be whether they stay exactly where they are and put in these new tanks that have the double containment walls and the monitoring and I know just enough to be dangerous, that can be done for that, whether it's done there or slightly to the south, to make a better overall plan for Speedway's development. That's really the question. And so we want to leave it as a permitted use with the idea that maybe all of the engineers can get together and think that this is an okay trade-off. I'm not saying they will, I'm just saying we want to have that be a possibility and be true to the working negotiations that they've had with Circle K all along, before this was ever in a W1, I mean a W5.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Go ahead and
We
close the
close.
public hearing, and
This time, 7:45, we'll close the public hearing.
if I could, just for a second, to follow up on Councilor Lindsay's astute question.
Thank you, I think.
Not only as it relates to the Circle K, but for instance, if a hotel comes in that wanted to put up an 8-story hotel that would otherwise violate the ordinance for the height of a structure, that hotel would have to go seek a variance. I think Elizabeth and Kathleen both alluded to that, and it's the same with the Circle K. So even if you approve this rezoning, Circle K would still have to go and apply for the variance for the W5 through the Board of Zoning Appeals and have the technically qualified person evaluate the proposal. So.
I'm going to make a motion in a moment, but I want to echo those thoughts and also point out to the gentleman to some of the comments the gentleman from Union Jacks pointed out. We, the council, occasionally get some advanced notice of some of the interests for properties like these, and the interest in this property, as some people in the audience have discussed, has been growing and building over a 10-plus year period. It's really exciting. And some of those users that were the potential uses that were described earlier are the kinds of folks that are interested in this property for very good reason, because it's a good investment today that 10 years ago they weren't sure was a good investment. So I'm excited by these opportunities without naming specific uses. So with that, I would move that we approve the 2019-ZON-071 zoning, rezoning to CS-commercial special as presented.
Second.
If I may, that should be conditioned upon receiving the consent from the cell tower owner, which is in works, but we haven't actually got it in hand yet.
Conditioned upon what our legal counsel just described.
Oh, okay, never mind, I take that back, I stand corrected. We don't need
Move
that.
that condition.
But it probably should be with the plan of operation and the sign program.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I would amend my motion to include the plan of operation and the site plan?
Yes, sign plan.
Signed
plan.
yes.
And I will second the additional.
All right. So we have a first and a second for the approvals as presented to us for 2019-ZON-071. Are there any further comments from the public at this time? Any questions from counselors? Any further questions?
Just one comment. As Councilor Lindsay pointed out and others did, there's lots of opportunity for more input in future planning. So this is a big step, a good step, but there's lots of opportunity for additional input.
And with that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of approving 2019-ZON-071, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That is approved 4-0. Thank you. Next is the approval of Resolution 2019-12. This is a resolution adopting an investment policy. And is this Monty or Jacob?
I'll do it. I think I can cover this faster than the previous agenda item. Bear with me. So we do have an investment policy, as some other communities do. It's seen as a favorable and financially prudent thing to do. And we have a policy, but noticed that it had expired at the beginning of this year, and we would like to pass a resolution to update it so that it is current. We can do it for another 2-year period, which is the maximum amount before they're supposed to expire. So we will follow that best practice. We're compliant with the policy and do not ask for any changes to the policy, just would like to update the date.
Madam President, I move that we approve Resolution 2019-12.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second for 2019-12. Take public comments at this time. Seeing no public comments, any questions from counselors? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of approving the Resolution 2019-12, adopting an investment policy, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's approved 4-0. Next are the approvals of claims and utility adjustments. Monty?
Thank you. We've submitted to the council for this meeting for claims starting from July 20th to August 9th. As I say a lot, it's pretty normal business, which we do, and I appreciate approval.
Madam President, make a motion, we approve the claims as presented by our clerk treasurer.
Second.
First and second for the approvals of claims. Any comments from the public? Any questions from counselors? Take a vote. All those in favor of approving the claims presented to us, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Claims are approved 4-0. Adjustments?
Thank you. Yes, utility adjustments on the same period of time, July 20th to August 9th. And we have adjustments that we'd like approved for $403.88.
Madam President, I move that we approve the utility adjustments as presented by our clerk treasurer, Monty Combs.
Second.
I have a first and a second on the adjustments. Any public comments? Seeing none, any questions from counselors? Hearing none, we'll take a vote on the approving of the adjustments presented to us by clerk treasurer. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjustments approved 4-0. Anything else for us, Monty?
No, after the zoning issue, I don't think I have enough energy left.
All right, we'll move to reports from department heads. And I think Tim stepped outside, so we'll start with Chief Jim Kimball.
My comments are all brief, non-controversial, and positive. First of all, the National Night Out, which several of you did attend, and, we consider that a very successful evening. It's an opportunity for the community to meet, and deal with officers. Gives us a chance to show off both equipment and officers' personalities, and I think on both occasions that was very successful. Takes a lot of people to make that happen, so I want to thank those who, helped put it together, but also those in the community that attended. I think they saw everything from a training session with Ruck to a little training session with, our new drones. So, can't say enough positive about the community and how that evening all went. So, secondly, the Brickyard 6, 7, and 8, September's coming. We have one more planning session. In talking to IMS, they're expecting about the same numbers they had last year, which obviously are down from years past, but, they're looking forward to the crowd that they do get. We really do the same kind of planning, local, state, federal law enforcement. Everybody from medical to fire department. And like I said, we have to, really pay the same attention to same details and concerns that you'd have regardless of crowd size. But we look forward to the Brickyard, and it'll be here before you know it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Next is Assistant Fire Chief Christopher Milhorn.
Good evening. Just a couple things from us. We had our written exam for our new hires last week. We should have the results back hopefully this week, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the next step after that's the structured oral interview. We had 44 people come to the written test, so fairly decent numbers. Other than that, we're in the process of the brickyard planning, just like Chief Campbell was saying, and where everything's moving along like it should be. So, does anybody have any? That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions. All right, thank you.
Next is Public Works, Wendell Walters.
Good evening, Council. Some updates on your utility departments. We'll start off with your street department. The crews are busy in all their maintenance programs. You see the fresh paint going down out on the streets and stuff, and all the patching. Sewer cleaning will start in a couple weeks. This will be in our outlining district, which is Farley, Chapel Hill area. All that is on a every other year rotation program, so that will be starting in a few weeks out in that district. On your water department, maintenance as always goes on with that. We've had 2 hit hydrants in the last week, one by a contractor and another one a vehicle accident over the weekend. So the one on Presto is scheduled tomorrow for replacement. The one on Moeller will get on schedule hopefully end of week or first week. That'll get back in service. All the public safety has been notified of those outages. Sunday morning, you'll notice water department activity, 2840 High School Road. We have an older meter that somehow has got some power to it that is going to get replaced, and we're doing this because we have a beauty shop, a dentist office, some other medical complex in that little strip mall there. So the shutdown time to benefit everybody, keep them in operation, we're going to do it Sunday morning. So you'll see activity out there on High School Road. They're doing all the prep work in advance, so hopefully everything will go good. In a couple hours, we'll be out of there. On your wastewater department, Norm's reporting everything's getting better. Had some issues, I guess, with the bugs and stuff, but it's starting to improve. He's looking at doing a digester boiler replacement. He's going through the cost estimate and stuff like that. We're thinking that we can use all the internal parts because that's run off methane gas or natural gas. So we're looking at to keep that operation going, but doing the housing, I guess what it is, a replacement on that. So he's getting all the cost estimates on that. And that'll catch us up kind of quick. Wanted to thank Bob and Jacob for reviewing the SAMCO agreement. It has been a beneficial program to us. It's eased up some hours for our departments, our cost. What we're paying them, we can justify quickly. So it's a good program. Just on the Cartersville Road, 16th Street project, just a quick update. They did start paving back Saturday. They are continuing to pave back intermediate on everything they've got tore out. What the problem was, they run into a lot of bad concrete that is underneath the base there, so they've had to do a lot more repairs. Then on our planter boxes, we found that we had bad concrete there. So they had a couple weeks of struggling of trying to redesign, figure out how to make those repairs. So they're in catch-up mode. Hopefully weather stays with us. We keep telling them that we have a race event coming up, and phone calls will start flying, and seeing a lot of us out there, so catch up kind of quick.
Wendell, can we ask a couple questions on
Yes,
the
sir.
Crawfordsville Road and 16th Street? There's been a lot of public interest in that. It's not actually our project.
Correct.
It's the City of Indianapolis, Marion County's project, and we're in front of them, pulling them along, and we're behind them, kind of kicking them and pushing them forward, right?
Yes.
The project's supposed to go through when?
It's scheduled to October 30th, final completion.
And how far are they going?
They go all the way to Lafayette Road.
Okay,
Their
so-
priority right now is, because we have the events in the town of Speedway, is their priority is get us to Olin Avenue and get the concrete work, asphalt work. By time race comes, we might be all intermediate. We might not have all the surface down, is what the superintendents are telling me, but it's all will be usable. It'll have temporary striping, everything in place to bring our fans in and get them in and out safely, so.
Question on your High School Road, the water thing you described.
The meter.
Yeah, I'll call it a thing.
The thing?
Is that going to affect water where we won't have any? in
No,
there?
it's just localized to that little strip mall, if you can remember there on Hollister, how it faces the dentist office, the beauty salon, those offices there are the only ones to be affected.
Okay. And then one other thing, you know I try not to bug you, but I've bugged you about the crews on Parkwood and Elaine.
Yes.
There's been some residents complaining about the trash they've left, and I want to thank you for your follow-up on that. And if people have more concerns with that, contact you or Jacob's office.
Contact Street Department. Rob's been a big player in that. We stay on the phone with that superintendent. We just had another issue over on Buick. He was on top of it this morning. Gentleman left his lunch in the person's yard. So, yes, and that's what we need is the help from the residents, the counselors. We can't be every place, so if you get a concern, and Kelly's been a big help on that too, is letting us know what's going on. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks, Wendell.
Thank you.
Next is Parks and Rec. Tammy?
Good evening. Since our last meeting, we had our final summer concert, and so the concert series is over. So I wanted to take this final opportunity to thank all the sponsors that we had, Lions Club, Wessler Engineering, the VFW Post 1587, Heritage Crystal Clean, Donegal Insurance Company, Alliance Insurance Agency, Inc., Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Stronger with Sarah, Speedway Town Talk, Speedway Town Press, Altair Promotions, and the Rice family. In addition to the summer concerts, we also had the Shakespeare in the Park, so it was a real successful summer. It's not quite over yet. We've got another big event coming up Saturday, August 24th, the West Indy Art and Music Festival. We have a rain date scheduled for the following day, Sunday, August 25th. That event will run 3:30 to 9. We've got 5 community-style bands or jazz bands scheduled. They're going to be performing on the hour beginning at 4 p.m. For 45 minutes each. We've got Endless Paradise Band, GMH Jazz Orchestra, Zionsville Concert Band, Twilight Nights Dance Orchestra, and West Indy Winds Community Band. In addition to those bands, we have 16 local artists that are going to be there with a booth set up, showcasing and selling their artwork. We've got painters, metal art, string art, jewelry, just a variety of art, photography. So I'm excited about that, so come out and support the local artists. Daredevil will have a beer and wine garden set up. We've got Jay's Barbecue Smokehouse will be serving food, and to round it all off, Fun Days Ice Cream. Of course, we all love that. So, and then I wanted to thank the police department for National Night Out. I was one of the booths set up there, and it was a real successful event. And so I took the opportunity to pass out park rules, kind of educate people on the park rules, and then just ask for their help to be our eyes, to help us and kind of show them how we partner with all the departments in the town. And that if somebody sees something that just doesn't look quite right, but, you know, it doesn't look like anything of danger or anything of an emergency, I was just reminding everybody about the 311 call, the non-emergency number. So that was well received, and it surprised me how many people were unaware of it after we had that, the police department had that big kickoff for it last year. So just keep pushing the education out there. And then I'm real excited, in June, along with some volunteers, we planted a bunch of plants in Leonard Park, made a little butterfly hummingbird garden. We're still waiting on the bench for that, but I'm happy to announce some monarchs have been there and laid eggs, and we've got little monarch caterpillars in our butterfly garden. And several people have witnessed they've been seeing butterflies and even a couple of hummingbirds. So our garden is already working. So it'll be really nice when we get the bench in there, and we invite people to come out and enjoy it. That's all I have today.
Any
Thank
questions?
you. Thanks, Tammy.
Tammy. Next, we'll do the economic develop. Tim? Rob.
Guess I didn't stay outside long enough. Thanks for covering for me, Chief. There's a lot going on around town. I'll focus on a few of the more prominent projects. You probably noticed the fencing up around 1300 block. The remediation's obviously underway. It's going very well to this point. I will tell you that they were a little surprised at how much was actually in there. So it's going a little slower than anticipated because they have to test everything and then determine if it's going to hazardous waste or not. But everything's getting cleaned up. It's definitely a good thing for the town. They anticipated it to be about a month cleanup, so somewhere early September they should be done, although it looks like they're moving quite a few more containers than they were anticipating. So we'll keep you posted on that, but everything's moving smoothly. In conjunction with that, we've kind of re-entered some discussions with the developer on that site who's interested in keep moving that forward. We've kind of thought that would kind of get pushed out with all the delays with cleanup, but we're still going to try to get something in place by the end of the year, and then just depending on how everything falls into place, whether we start something this year or next year. But there is some momentum on that site, and just as there is out in 2500 with everything going on in Speedway, a lot of interest in that facilities there at 1300 as well. So with the plan that was presented when we're looking at building number 1 and just trying to tighten up some tenants, but a lot of interest, and I think it won't take us long to fill that facility once we get it built. So we'll keep you posted on that as well. 10th and Poco, the cleanup site there. There was some hang up, not on our end, but on Praxair's end, just getting some internal approvals. It looks to all be cleared up now. Everything's been signed off and released from IDEM, and assuming we can get everything coordinated, I believe we'll start hopefully by the end of the month on that cleanup remediation as well. The Redevelopment Commission is going to the Board of Zoning Appeals it's September 4th, just to make sure we get the proper approvals for the fencing, since it's on the property line a little higher. It'll match exactly what's on Main Street for Praxair, but we wanted to make sure that we follow the proper processes. So you'll see us September 4th at the Board of Zoning Appeal, but we're hoping they get mobilized by the end of the month here and start working. So that's been pretty significantly delayed this year, so we're anxious to get that one cleaned up. Adjacent to that, behind Delara, the Able Motorsports facility, that was delayed a few weeks. Unfortunately, their site construction, I'm saying it wrong, firm went belly up and left the site. So it took them a few weeks to scramble and interview a few other firms and get somebody mobilized. They are out there today. This week they were remobilized. They were unloading storm sewer pipes, and everything seems to be back on track. So we're excited to see that progress out there after a couple-week delay. And then finally, I know there's a lot of interest in what's happening on the Wilshire Hotel. As we stated last time, they obviously were hoping to get back up and mobilized by the end of July, and that did not happen. They ended up diving in pretty deep to a lot of the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Just from conversations today with both F.A. Wilhelm and developer Drew Loftus, they appear to be close to having all that tied up. There is our weekly meeting, which is Wednesdays out on site. They're hoping to get to a point where they're comfortable that that's all tied up, and then we're able to set a date where they can remobilize and get all the subcontractors back on schedule. So hopefully Wednesday they'll be able to set a new schedule and get that all confirmed with the different groups and get everybody back working there. I know everyone's really excited to see that project. Had so much momentum, and this delay has been tough to watch, but they're still on target. They're still within the economic development agreement with everything that was negotiated. We just we'll keep on track with them. We'll keep talking to everybody and having representatives from our owner's rep at the meetings to make sure that we're not missing anything. And as soon as we hear something, we'll let all of you know. But I think we're pretty close. I don't want to give you an exact date because as soon as you do, it misses. But I believe some of the last few weeks have also been tied up due to vacations from Wilhelm employees and some of the subcontractor employees. So it's looked a little more vacant than usual because they were on vacation. But everybody's back now, and you should see at least some of our meetings going on at the site. And again, hopefully they're mobilized again. Happy to answer any questions. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Next will be reports from town manager. Jacob?
Yep, thank you, Madam President. So as promised, starting off with FEMA review and that process, unfortunately, still no approval, but there has been a fair amount of activity between our consultant, state, county, and FEMA, and we continue to inquire frequently. It feels like we've been getting, there's been more dialogue back and forth, trying to move this along. Still don't have an ETA on an exact date, which I don't think we'll ever get. I think they'll just eventually tell us, but it does feel like we're getting to the final stages, and we're optimistic about that. Also want to mention that we have a couple of job openings in the town of Speedway. One is for a water operator, as well as a full-time parks laborer to kind of help out around the parks. Again, that's a full-time position. Both are posted online. If you're interested in applying, please do so, or reach out to anybody you might know at the town that could help you apply, and we'd be happy to look at your resume and application. And then last but not least, just want to give a shout out to, we had a great intern this summer, Jeff Smith. He's a Speedway Sparkplug grad, and we brought him in to help with some of the tasks around the new town hall remodeling in that project. But he did so much more and just pitched in wherever he could. So we had a great summer with him, and wish him good luck next year in his sophomore year at Rose Holman. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Jacob, can you touch real briefly about what Kelly's doing with the announcement she's making at the beginning of the week, and then I think it's around Speedway and the newsletter that she's doing, and how people can access that?
She's doing, so she's doing the Fast Facts Friday, and that has been something she's been putting out on social media, as well as the Around Speedway. And then she recently added, kind of for me, because I'm not frequently on social media, so she started putting it through email as well, and there's a way to sign up on the website for that. And she's had some kind of technical difficulties with the first try, but she's working those out, and that'll be going out through email as well as on social media.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, next will be councilors' reports. We'll start with Councilor David Lindsay.
Jacob just gave my report for me. That's all I have.
Vice President Jeff Matthews.
I have nothing this evening.
Councilor Gary Rakes.
I was just going to, when Chief Campbell was up, I was going to say congratulations. The night out was terrific. I don't know how many people were there exactly, but I'm going to guess a few hundred or more.
Yes.
It was terrific.
Didn't have many hot dogs left.
Yeah, not many hot dogs left, he said. And then just, I wanted to say, I was on Main Street last Friday night, and it was really encouraging. First of all, we had great weather, but between an event going on at Daredevil with music being played, with Food Truck Friday, they call it, they're having it every Friday, to a small business pop-up that was in the parking lot of Charlie Brown's, to lines out the door at every restaurant, or even Fun Days, the new ice cream shop, of people on the street. Ran into probably 100 people that I knew and 500 people I didn't know, and it's what we wanted, and it's what we've been aiming for, and it's really refreshing and exciting to see that, and just people giving you the thumbs up, or just generally seeing families together. They're excited about being able to stay in Speedway and do those things. So I just want to congratulate all those that have been involved in that, and thank those that are working hard to make that continue to happen. That's all I have.
Thank you, Gary. And last is my report, and I have nothing this evening, so I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:13.